Hi, everyone. I'm Greg Lambert with the Geek in Review, and we have with us today Sam Moore from Legal Technology Hub. And Sam, you're going to talk to us a little bit about the technology selection offering that you have there.
Yep, that's great. Thank you, Greg. So, law firms and law departments come to Legal Tech Hub every day to find out key information about legal tech vendors and products. We've got so much information available to any kind of technology buyer, but sometimes we're engaged in a much more hands on capacity. We actually offer a technology selection service, which is a 6 step advisory framework we've designed to help our clients choose the right solution for them. And our approach is entirely agnostic, independent, and is designed to help our clients by giving them exactly what they need, whether that's conducting stakeholder interviews and needs assessments on their side, through vendor demonstrations and shortlisting, all the way towards producing an executive report outlining our top 3 recommended solutions for their particular business challenge, ready to go to their decision makers to act upon. So if you have a technology selection project coming up, please go to legaltechnologyhub.com/advisory to learn how we can help.
All right. Well, it sounds super useful. Thanks for putting a spotlight on that, Sam.
Thank you.
Welcome to the Geek in Review, the podcast focused on innovative and creative ideas in the legal industry. I'm Marlene Gebauer.
And I'm Greg Lambert. And this week we are thrilled to welcome a guest who's tackling what might be the single biggest barrier to AI adoption in the legal profession today, and that's trust.
Absolutely. Nguyen is the co-founder and chief operating officer of TruthSystems.ai. His background is a unique trifecta, perfectly suited for this challenge, actually. So a foundation in linguistics and computer science from UCLA, deep research into supervisory AI agents at Stanford Law, and practical at-scale experience shipping trust and safety tools for a major fintech unicorn. So welcome, Nam.
Thank you so much for having me here. Yeah.
Yeah. So, let's talk a little bit about that background for a while. It's that fascinating combination of this linguistics and computer science, AI research at Stanford Law, and the practical trust and safety product management at the fintech unicorn. So how did these distinct experiences, trifecta as we called it, kind of shape the DNA of True Systems as it is today?
Yeah. I mean, happy to share a little bit more about our story and my story. So, yeah, I grew up in Vietnam. I learned English actually as a second language. And I think throughout that process, it really kind of sparked the fascination for me of like how many humans actually acquire and can programmatically represent language. So that kind of segues perfectly into the linguistic and computer science background I had at UCLA. I also did a lot of NLP and AI research back there as well. And I think there I got to reconnect with my co-founders. He basically lived a block away from my childhood home back in Vietnam. And yeah, it was a very serendipitous moment. Back then, we're just like playing around with the early GPT-3 models. And I think like everyone, we just knew how capable these technology will be. But from a research perspective, what we were thinking is that like the field will be so focused on answering the questions of who will build the most performant models and applications. And I think me and my co-founder Alex wanted to ask or answer the questions of who is making sure these systems are safe and trustworthy. And I think that question kind of like brought us naturally to Stanford Law, where we met Dr. Megan Ma. And there we got to work with her on the supervisory AI agent project, as you mentioned. And there we started tackling, as you said, the number one problem for law firms adopting AI, which was trust. And our first pass at it was, okay, can we embed legal and ethical guardrails into every AI interactions for lawyers. Very fortunate to have presented this work to congressional members, EU policymakers, and some risk functions at some AmLaw 30 firms. And I think at those presentations, the reaction we saw made us realize that the need for trustworthy AI governance is urgent. Like, it can't wait for another academic paper. And I think that's how Truth Systems really spun out to be. And going back to your questions of how that kind of turned into the DNA of Truth Systems, I think for first and foremost, research is so important. As Alex and I are both former researchers, but also our founding engineer, Miko was previously the head of AI research at Legora. I think the difference here is we are trying to tackle it in a very pragmatic way. So we don't want to just theorize about this topic. We're trying to build the infrastructure for trust and safety that makes it real and actionable for law firms today.
Yeah, I imagine that message resonates with firms because it is something that they wrestle with all the time in terms of are
Hmm.
these things safe, and is our data safe? We'd love to use these things, but so
Hmm.
hearing that you're focusing pragmatically, I think probably resonates quite well with them.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think it's just been very like fortunate for us to see kind of the response because everyone wants to innovate and innovate fast. But I think at times it's very easy to have, a lot of these projects go out of control. And our goal is to allow firms to exert controls over the exciting pace of this technology.
I mean, what has been just in general, like what have they responded? I'm just curious. Like,
Yeah, I think it's just kind of we've seen such a spectrum of response because we see really a spectrum of where firms are in their AI adoption journey, right? There are so many firms that like they've kind of waited up until now to get going on that. And for us, we can come in and help them set up, okay, let us help you align that to your outside counsel guidelines. Let us make sure that you have the proper access controls and guardrails to properly try out this technology. And then for firms that are more mature in the adoption journey, then we get to think through, okay, how can we make governance a competitive advantage for you? Where we go just beyond on, setting the right controls, but also showing to your clients these controls as well. So I think, being able to look at that spectrum of where people at in their journeys and how can we kind of bring them together and move along in the technological progress chart. I think that's just been super exciting for us at Truth Systems.
so I'm very intrigued. Nam, on your website, you state a vision where AI serves as both the subject and the infrastructure of governance. So, can you tell us a little bit what you mean about that?
Yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite thing to talk about because when we say AI should both be the subject and infrastructure of governance, obviously we mean two things, right? First, AI as a subject, I think a lot of people agree it's a very powerful technology that needs oversight, accountability, and guardrails. And, like any powerful technology here, it just should be governed very responsibly. But I think the exciting part here is how can AI be the infrastructure for that? And I think if you look intuitively into what large language models really excel at, it is first interpreting language and then being able to process a vast amount of unstructured data. And I think these two traits alone makes AI the ideal candidate to help implement governance itself. So, you guys probably talk a lot about the AI Copilot to lawyers, where it's kind of like an extra pair of arms helping lawyers with tasks such as research or review. At Stanford, and what we're doing right now is thinking about how can we build AI risk supervisors, where we're building an extra pair of eyes, alerting lawyers of risk in real time, such as violating potential confidentiality, compliance, or even ethical violations. I think when we talk about these two paradigms, it's about regulating AI not from the outside, but to make AI part of that solutions, where governance can lives and breathe within the workflow, and we can transform trust and safety from something people say or just a checkbox that we're trying to get through to a dynamic system that learns and adapts and evolves with the organizations over time.
Yeah. Well, we've been looking for decades for things that can do well with unstructured data because we got tons of
Yeah.
unstructured data
We do.
to
Yeah.
work with. So, um, well, let's talk a little bit about the controversial conversations that are going around about things like hallucinations. But this and we talked about hallucinations as being these flawed outputs from the AI models, where it takes something that you're asking it, and it just kind of makes something up, or gives an answer that maybe the person wants to hear. So, however, in with truth systems, you with your charter, I guess what you call charter, like the program, or how do you refer to what do you refer to as charter?
Yeah, so Charter basically at the core is a platform that allows firms to deploy access controls and guardrails to all of their, um, vendor AI applications,
Right.
or even like programs that they're building themselves. And the way we manifest in the lawyers or paralegals or staff workspace is we are browser extensions that basically can help firms monitor and alert before they can potentially violate any firm's restrictions or client restrictions in real time.
Yeah. So one of the things that charter does is kind of goes and preempts potential issues. And so why is it, I think, just as critical to govern the types of prompts that a lawyer writes, just as it is to verify the answers that the AI provides? And how does this kind of holistic approach to trust and safety approach kind of set you guys apart from the market?
Yeah, I mean, we do believe that just in regulated fields like law, the biggest risks actually begin with the input, right? Or obviously take hallucinations, for example. We were trying to tackle that problem for a long time. And when we're in the environments talking to firm and understanding what people do, what we found often happens is because people were actually going to public platforms that aren't connected to case laws or verified sources. That's such a low-hanging fruit. And
Yeah.
then you look at a single prompt itself, right? It's very tricky. At Stanford, when we saw an instance, a law firms we were working with, their client has told the law firms to only use AI after they approved it. Now, one of the associates at the time actually drafted a memo in ChatGPT, unapproved tools, and it was riddled with hallucinations. Now, it was good that the firm were able to catch it beforehand, but I want to take a beat here and just imagine what could have gone wrong. Like,
Yeah.
if that slipped across the line, that's newsworthy headline, right? But there's also a fundamental level of violations here where you're going against the rules of engagement you have with your clients for using those unapproved tools. That's the kind of breach in trust that I think will be very hard for a firm to restore. And I think we built Charter to govern that entire input layer, from managing access to different platforms to governing the behaviors within them, so that we can allow firms to translate these policies and client restrictions into the enforcement tools that they need to step in the moment before someone could breach confidentiality or compliance. Last part to it is, when you talk about this holistic approach to AI safety, I think that's where truth systems really want to differentiate, because we don't want to just exist by preventing bad answers or outputs. We want to build systems, or help firms build systems, that make every interactions from the first input to the final result safe and compliant, and it should be held to the highest values that the legal profession always upkeep.
Yeah, no, I mean, it kind of makes sense well, I mean, it definitely makes sense when we're talking about unapproved, using ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini
Yeah,
that's
that
not
like
approved.
shadow use.
Is,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
there is there anything that we're missing as far as like approved tools? So is there something we should also be aware of when it comes to, say, using Microsoft Copilot or
Mm-hmm.
Harvey, or even the approved tools? Is there anything that we need to be thinking about even with the approved tools when it comes to prompting and how we're using it?
Yeah, I think the way that I always talk to firms about this is that what you are having in your hands is a host of tools that can do basically everything, but can it do everything well? Probably not, right? Um, I think the kind of analogy I always make is that, hey, you kind of have a very powerful hammer and you kind of want it to just nail down the right spot. But then because sometimes you can cook an omelet on it, you don't want to use it to cook an omelet, right? So going back to the example of Copilot, yeah, Copilot is very powerful in every single interactions, but it's not suitable for you to do legal research on them. And one of the things we like to work with firms, or we're already working with firms with, is how can we enforce behavioral guardrails, making sure that you're using the right tools for the right use cases. So essentially allowing firms to, invest that, hey, this is a tool, we want it to be used this way, and we don't want any of our attorneys or staff to use it in any other ways that the tool shouldn't be supporting. And I think that's where we also want to focus with the approved tools as well.
All right.
There's a couple points I'm thinking about when you talk about this, like, firms saying, okay, we only want you to use these types of tools. But as you said, that tool might not be good to cook an omelet, but that's
Yeah.
maybe where your innovation or your KM or your, research people are coming in and giving information about, like, yeah, these tools are good for this and these other
Mm-hmm.
tools are good for something else. So I think there's an opportunity
Mm-hmm.
for those groups to kind of work and provide their expertise to sort of help with that guidance. And the other thing that struck me is it's hard to figure this stuff out because you have a I know,
It's
stating the obvious,
hard.
right? It's hard.
Yeah.
It's like you have a multiple areas where you're trying to gather this information. Like you have outside counsel guidelines, and you have the firm policy, and then there might be more
Mm-hmm.
than one policy. And for a practitioner, it's kind of like, what do I do? And this
Mm-hmm.
type of tool combines all of that information and kind of helps you as you're doing the work and sort of
Mm-hmm.
directs you in the right way.
Yeah. 100%. And I think this idea for us on how can we operationalize governance, not just something where firms come together once every quarter, or like, have multiple meetings just to draft up a static policy documents, then it becomes something that just rots or being forgotten in a SharePoint somewhere. We want like policies and governance to live at every single interactions to guide the users in the right directions. And I think it goes back to, when we think through the DNA of what we want truth systems to be, is that how can we fundamentally shape the way users, or in this case, attorneys, interact with AI and different software? And can we impact it in a positive way
Hmm.
that allows us to use these very powerful tools responsibly?
Yeah. So I want to get back to hallucinations again.
Mm-hmm.
And you've written about the limitations of RAG, retrieval augmented generation, saying, it's not a silver bullet for
Mm-hmm.
ending hallucinations. Now there is some marketing out there for some systems saying, they are hallucination free. so
Asterisk.
Yeah,
so
asterisk. Yeah.
setting you up. I'm just setting you up. So
Yes.
based on your research, where does simple RAG implementation fall short? How has that understanding informed truth systems in terms of providing a more robust layer of verification?
Yeah, I think that's a topic that we've cared very deeply about. I think retrieval augmented generations often is marketed as a fix for hallucinations, but it's not really. The problem exists at both the R, the retrieval part, and the G, the generation stage, right? I've written on the retrieval problem where legal context is super, super tricky. Even, a lot of firms like context engineers major in the Valley right now, because for legal there's similar cause, jurisdictions, definitions that RAG pipelines can easily pick the wrong context because it might see it as the right one. And I think because the model generates it very confidently, but it's based on kind of the wrong evidence. The generation problem actually is interesting because OpenAI actually recently produced a paper called Why Language Models Hallucinate. And it's explained that LLMs, especially the reasoning models these days, are trained on reward functions, which guides models' propensity to generate each answer. And the reward models basically are penalizing these language models for uncertainty. So they actually lose points in training for saying, I don't know. And why is that? Because all of these different benchmarking that we've provided, just it's marketing tools, and different labs just want to chase those higher benchmark scores. So in the race of chasing better marketing headlines, we've literally taught our models to answer even when they shouldn't. And I think this is where kind of our approach is in the opposite direction. We want to make smaller but more predictable models that are rewarded for spotting contradictions. And I think when you try to design models that values accuracy over confidence, I think verifications would triumph velocities and marketing headlines in the specific instance as well.
Yeah, one of the problems, and I don't think I'm saying anything that's that controversial here, but the RAG technology for legal research has not been good for the last couple of years. It feels like it's gotten a little bit better, and I think part of that is the underlying foundational models have gotten better at kind of going back and as far as that retrieval part. If it doesn't get the right stuff the first time, it can go back and supplement that. But now the generation part, now you've got me doubting myself whether it's improved or it just sounds like it's improved. Have you noticed any significant improvement or changes in how it works with RAG technology in legal?
Yeah, I think when you think through the problems or reward functions right now, and it basically goes out to thinking through, I guess, where would you bet in terms of scaling law? So scaling laws is basically, if you can you just add more compute and it will automatically means better models. And I think people are very divided on how scaling laws would play out. The reason why so many labs or companies that are creating evaluation tools right now is getting a lot of money, because people can bet that if you can continuously produce the right evaluations, scaling laws would allow you to make the models generate better answers. And that is hopeful on that end. But if you don't really bet on scaling laws, and a lot of people have come out and talk about this, for example, even Richard Sutton, the father of reinforcement learning, he is saying maybe large language model isn't the paradigm to solve this. And I think, as much as I'd like to be hopeful, and also I kind of want to listen to Richard Sutton too, the end of the day, the answer is we will kind of have to wait and see. I do see that every vendor is just getting a little bit better at it, and hopefully with the scale and the interest and the money that is going into this field, that we will get into an endpoint where it is good enough, I believe. Yeah.
It's really expensive to be good enough.
Yes.
Some good news for you. I know you've just announced a major $4 million seed round led by Gradient
Congratulations.
Ventures in
Thank you so
Lightspeed. So
much.
yeah,
Yeah.
congrats. Let me politely put, now that you got the money, what are you going to do with it? So, what does the infusion of capital do? Just as importantly, is this a vote of confidence from, top tier VCs to enable what you do next? Let me just go back. Now that you got the money, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah. Yes. The $1 million questions, essentially, right?
Yeah, 4 million in this case.
Yeah, $4 million question.
Yes. Yeah, I think for us, the interesting problem set that we'd like to solve right now is, okay, how can we help firms with this, amount of investment to move from adopting AI to governing it in a measurable and client-facing way? So I think now we want to help everyone to go above, okay, I just bought this tool. I went on a press release on I just bought this tools, to now being able to show that, okay, how am I using it, and am I using it responsibly? And I think just this deepening visibility and assurance to clients, and for us to invest in expanding the product development around this real-time visibility into how AI is being used across, all your vendors, your clients, and matters. We want to help firms demonstrate compliance and alignment with these expectations. And I think for us to partner with innovations and risk teams inside of these firms to co-develop and test these capabilities in live environments, that's where like when we really want to make trust and safety not just works in practice, but also in like not just work in theory, but also in practice as well. And I think overall, it's just, yeah, I think it's no longer sufficient to say you've adopted AI. The real competitive advantage is like, how can you show that you're using it in a way that adds value to the client and it's responsible? And we're investing to give the firms the ability to show, not just tell, how they're innovating with, transparency, accountability, and essentially what happens at the end of the day is just trust at scale.
Yeah. Do you see this being built into the engagement letters with clients? Is here's not just how we're using the AI, but how we're actually govern, making sure that we're complying, both with our internal rules and your rules and other guidelines. You see that as being significant enough to be kind of embedded in the engagement letters?
Yeah, I think engagement letter is one thing, but even just business development materials too. By virtue of having all this wealth of data you guys are able to collect of saying these are the different ways our attorneys are using AI, this is where they're using it in these different softwares, and hopefully we have the ability to work with firm on benchmarking it against like what is the baseline, then essentially you have a very compelling business case of, oh, look at what we are doing right now, and the thing that we're doing is a lot better than the existing status quo. And I think that's just deepening the trust between the clients and the law firms so much that the firms that are investing in this area will be the one we hope to come out of this race and win it.
Mhm. So many of the big players in legal AI, they operate as sort of walled gardens. So they promise
Hmm.
safety from within, we're a closed system. Now, you have taken a different approach with Truth Systems. So it's platform agnostic.
Hmm.
It acts as a universal governance layer for any AI tool that the firm uses. Now, I'm interested sort of why did you sort of take that tact when sort of the rest of the market seems to be taking, the other way, what's the strategic thinking behind this independent auditor model? How do you convince a firm that's already spent a whole lot of money on an integrated platform that they need this third party verification tool?
Yeah, I think the industry reality is, first of all, I think Harvey and co-counsels are building good products, and they're building it in a very powerful manner, and as you said, in very contained systems, right? But governance is a slightly different paradigm because governance is only as good as its coverage. And I think, you guys have seen this played out many times before. Like, even when firms are buying a Harvey and a co-counsel, they won't live inside a single platform. Our bet is that they'll keep adopting new tools, or even these days with, firms even acquiring tech vendors, right? You see firms will build even custom AI workflows internally as well. So I think from your seat, you guys probably seen this field sickly involved many times. And I think our goal is to give firms the ability to put their own governance controls on top of any platforms. So firms can kind of define, enforce, and evolve with their own policies that they don't have to wait for another vendor's roadmap. And I think this independent governance layer, it's not about standing apart from all these powerful vendors, but I think it's more to align with firms and empower them to own their own ecosystems. So whether that is a Harvey, a co-counsel, or even their own app, the firm's ethical standards, their client restrictions, the confidentiality rules move with them. And I think the outcome, what we want is the freedom that comes with the accountability and the ability to innovate confidently, knowing that your governance stay consistent wherever your AI lives.
Well, before we get to our crystal ball question, we've been asking folks, besides the Geek in Review,
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you look at to kind of what kind of news or blogs or other ways are you helping yourself keep up to date with the rapid changes in legal tech and AI, and in your case, even risk management? What are your go-to resources?
Yeah, so I guess in the legal tech field and just voices in legal that I admire in general, I think I really much look up to Jayum. I think the way that she articulates that firm must leverage AI as a differentiator definitely strikes a huge chord, because essentially what we are in this race for is the race with also our own clients, because the in-house counsels, they already have access to the same tools. So the edge comes from how can you apply AI strategically to move up market as well. So I think she ties just so brilliantly about how we should innovate the business model, not just sheerly adopt the technology. For matters related to AI, I actually take a slightly contrarian view. I just kind of believe that if you chase every new trends, new publications going out there, you essentially will chase the marketing cycle. And I think, true understanding comes here from revisiting a lot of fundamentals. So I mentioned earlier, Dorkesh Patel's has a beautiful interview with Richard Sutton, the father of reinforcement learning. And I think it's just kind of a masterclass on how do you revisit first principle in a world that is so much noise. And yeah, lastly, I think AI governance, risk management, give a very quick shout out to Tara Waters and Ryan McDonald's, two very powerful and thoughtful voices in the space that just kind of give a lot of high quality, grounded content on, how can you build, also deploy AI systems that are trustworthy. And I think they does a very good job of like, showing small examples where you can try it out yourself as well.
All right, Nam, we are asking you the crystal ball question that we
Yes.
ask all our guests. So, what's the single biggest structural change you think AI governance tools like Truth Systems are going to force upon legal professionals' relationship with technology? Is the industry as currently constructed prepared for that change?
I bet I know the answer.
No, no, it's not.
No, it's not. No, we were the same as we are yesterday. um, I think overall, you know, what AI governance will do is it's going to bring a whole new level of transparency and intelligence to the legal professions as we've never seen before. Because as I mentioned a lot earlier, firms will finally see how AI is being used across their entire ecosystems. So not just the tools they bought, but also the public platforms, and seeing then how they're being used by whom and is their impact here. And I think a lot of voices has come out and saying like, hey, at this age, the data is your competitive advantage. And insight into these usage patterns, the adoptions, and the outcomes will be how firms differentiate. And as I said, like one of the most exciting projects we're doing right now is actually helping firms measure AI usage across all their vendors, to go and saying like show to their clients and show how it affects the outcome. Because our philosophy is, yes, truth systems at the end of our core, at the end of the day, our core is a GRC platform first. And we're just so fortunate to start out in law and have law firms as our first big partners. But our goal is to not have to partner with every law firms, but we want to serve all the law firms that we serve to be successful, and all the law firms that we serve has the capability to win. So the structural shift here, I would argue, is that governance and compliance will no longer be blockers. I think in this new age, we want it to become the differentiators, because then it's not about slowing innovation down. It's about how you're scaling it responsibility with transparency and trust at the core. And yeah, I think that's my crystal ball in the future that truth systems would like to
So
build.
differentiators, not blockers.
Not blockers, yes.
All right. Well, Nam Nguyen from TruthSystems.ai. I want to thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us today. This has been fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah, no, thank you, Greg and Marlene, for giving me the platform. Really enjoy being on the show, and also just have been a fan for forever. So,
Thank you to all our listeners for taking the time to listen to the Geek Review podcasts. If you enjoy the show, please share it with a colleague. We'd love to hear from you on LinkedIn and TikTok.
All right. And Nam, if listeners want to learn more about your work and the work there at True Systems, where's the best place for them to go?
yeah, obviously, our website, truthsystems.ai. Feel free to schedule time to, if you just want to chat with me about, how we think through AI governance. I also try to post through a lot of my thoughts on where the industry can head to, the capabilities of this technology on my LinkedIn as well. So feel free to give me a follow at Nguyen on LinkedIn. And super excited to be here again. And hopefully we'll get to hear more from all the audience on how they think AI governance can shape the future of the legal profession as well.
Well, it's been a delight having you on the show. And as always, the music you hear is from Jerry David DeSica. Thank you, Jerry, and bye, everybody.
Thank you guys so much.